From Caracas, I'm Cody Weddle. Today I'm joined by Simon Arrechider. Now he oversees the anti-drug program that's part of the Venezuelan Capital District, and he joins us today on From Caracas to talk about his organization and how it aims to prevent drug use here in the Venezuelan capital. Simon, thanks so much for joining us today, and that's where I'll let you start. Let's talk about your organization. How was it founded, and when was it formed, and what are your goals?
Well, I am the director of the Municipality Unit for Drug Enforcement, under the management of the Caracas Mayor's Office. Founded in 2007, after the enactment of the National Act on Drug Enforcement that was put forward by President Hugo Chavez. We work together with the National Office on Drug Control, responsible for national policies on drug control. Every Venezuelan mayor's office has a local office on drug control. In the case of Caracas, since it's the capital city of Venezuela, having a larger population than other major cities, we have an office with more capacity and staff. Our main focus is prevention.
And I was looking sort of at your website. You have 9 areas in which you hope to have an influence here in Caracas, and you also have a poster here. So let's talk about those 9 areas.
Sí, antes de responder esa pregunta quisiera complementar un poco con la visión que nosotros tenemos sobre este tema, que es el tema de la droga, y hacer un poco un análisis geopolítico de este fenómeno. Nosotros creemos que hay dos elementos históricamente.
First, I would like to show you our view on this topic, a geopolitical analysis of this phenomena. We believe that there are 2 historical elements associated to drugs. The first being drugs as a tool for the control and domination of the peoples by the American Empire, and second, the political and economic use of drugs. At this point, I would like to raise 2 main questions that were previously posed by Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano. How is it that the US government is considered the world police, but they are the ones buying half of the drug that is produced around the world? And secondly, how is it that the US is able to determine where mass production weapons are produced, and yet they are not able to stop the flow of drugs into the United States? Furthermore, in Latin America, Colombia and Peru have the highest rate of production of drugs, regardless of the American military bases in these countries. And also, there are military-occupied countries such as Afghanistan, with one of the highest rates of drug production around the world. When we analyze the geopolitics of drugs, we who are in continuous struggle for freedom and in a continuous battle, we have several precepts. For example, as long as people face drug addiction, they will not be able to do the revolution, nor will they be able to deal with their hardships. And as long as a nation faces drug addiction, it will be easily dominated by foreign actors. Taking this into consideration, we could say that the drug issue is related to severe aspects of society, and I dare to say that it is related to the current events taking place in Venezuela at the moment. For example, President Maduro recently talked about parapolitics, which is twofold: the economic war and drug trafficking and crime. The Venezuelan opposition says that we are forging an anti-Colombian sentiment because of the measures put in place by President Maduro, but it is not so. We regard the Colombian people as our brothers. However, the Venezuelan bourgeoisie has a paramilitary arm that infiltrates people in popular sectors, especially in Caracas. That is why our prevention actions must be within this geopolitical framework, so we succeed in drug control. Likewise, we believe it is fundamental to link drug trafficking with capitalism. The drug issue is often analyzed by analysts, but sometimes they do not address its roots and the purpose of drug production, topics that should be part of the debate. We have 9 main programs to tackle prevention, a campaign that we use in classrooms so the students organize themselves and learn how to face different situations in a daily basis. They will be able to know the causes and consequences of the use of drugs. We work with the students along with their parents and the community. We encourage them to establish the Committees for Peace and Life, organizations from different communities that organize themselves to tackle a common program, drugs. We also have workshops, cinema forum, talks, and we work with several organizations made up of young men and women who were drug addicts in the past. They tell their story, talking about how they entered that world and how they managed to get out of it, making an impact in those who attended the different activities. We also have the Orange Point, which are propaganda campaigns for life, peace and prevention, providing the youth with tools to have alternatives other than drugs. We work with other governmental institutions in the peace zones and sports courts. We want to have one person that would help us to tackle these issues in each household, family, school, and community, with mothers, fathers, sisters, everybody teaching their children the consequences of the use of drugs to put an end to this practice that harms our family members, our friends, and the revolution, because people with drug issues cannot do the revolution, so the American empire has infiltrated paramilitary groups in our communities to damage our people.
Con un fin supremo que es tratar de disminuir este flagelo que daña la familia y que daña un proceso revolucionario, porque nosotros creemos que un pueblo adicto no hace revolución y por lo tanto el imperialismo norteamericano nos ha tratado a nosotros de infiltrar y a través del paramilitarismo el narcotráfico en nuestros barrios para dañar nuestros sectores populares.
You were talking about, you said military bases, countries with military bases like Peru and Colombia are some of the biggest producers of drugs with U.S. military bases. What are you insinuating there, that the U.S. is not sincere in fighting drugs, or that the system that it imposes on the rest of the world is one where drug use is encouraged? Expand a little bit more on that for me.
Sí, habría que preguntarse varias cosas.
Your question leads to more questions. When you read the news on daily basis, you don't read about an American drug trafficker. All of them are Latin Americans. The United States leads the world in illegal drug use, but you don't hear of a top American trafficker. Then you could say that there is a complicity. The United States has a technological capacity that allows them to go to the moon and to spy every country of the world, with the control of social media and the internet. Then, how can they not fight drug trafficking in an effective fashion in their own country? That's why we are suspicious about it. Some analysts say that the American economy would collapse were it not because drug trafficking. It is estimated that the global drug trade is about $250 billion. It is 2/3 of the GDP of the UN member countries, with a 5% annual increase in crime. We would like to emphasize the fact that drugs play a fundamental role within the capitalist system. Drugs are the driving force of capitalism when it comes to values, economy, and control of other peoples. Actually, the Venezuelan opposition is trying to link leaders of the Bolivarian Revolution with drug trafficking gangs. But it is us, the Venezuelan government, who are fighting against this situation. President Nicolas Maduro said that there are more than 100 capos or drug lords detained in Venezuela, out of which 70 were handed to the Colombian government and the United States. There are 30 more that will be sent to Colombia. President Maduro also declared Venezuela a territory free of cultivation and production of drugs. Also, we have a fund to fight drug trafficking and a National Monetary Institute to keep track of illegal drugs. And between 2012 and 2015, 92 airplanes were seized in Venezuelan territory by the Venezuelan armed forces. In 2005, the Venezuelan government was able to link the American Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, to drug trafficker actors. Commander Hugo Chavez instructed the institutions to expel this agency out of Venezuela. We seized 70% more illegal drugs in 2005 than the DEA did between 1995 and 2005 as a result of these operations. The United Nations reports on drug and crime show how much Venezuela has done to fight drug trafficking, and the UN also says that Venezuela is free of drug cultivation.
And let's talk a little bit more about that. Here in Venezuela, that's an important fact there, that under former President Hugo Chavez, the fight against drugs here in Venezuela changed drastically, and also within the world system, because Chavez sort of kicked out the Drug Enforcement Agency of the United States. Now, the United States, of course, wants it to appear that the fight against drugs here has declined because of that. Tell me about that process and why former President Chavez kicked out the DEA, and how Venezuela has taken command of the fight against drugs here in the country.
The United States considers Venezuela to be a bad example, mainly because Venezuela, in its fight for a free and sovereign nation, caused a change on international geopolitics. Venezuela's fight prevented the implementation of the Free Trade Area of the Americas, the FTAA, in 2005, and also prompted the establishment of regional organizations in Latin America, such as the Union of South American Nations, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, Petrocaribe, and others, that don't serve the interest of the United States. Venezuela also decided to exercise sovereignty over its natural resources. Venezuela has one of the world's biggest oil reserves, and as Eduardo Galeano put it, as lungs need air, so U.S. economy needs Latin American minerals. That's why the Venezuelan government is currently being targeted by certain U.S.-financed groups that have no regard for democracy. Venezuela is a country that has deliberated more elections in the last 15 years, and the Venezuela's electoral system during these last 15 years has set an example on how to carry out electoral processes. But the United States has a permanent campaign against Venezuela. The U.S. is using the same strategy used with Cuba in 1960, when realizing that the Cuban government was impossible to defeat through democratic means. It decided to economically strangle Cuba to make the Cuban people revolt against the Cuban Revolution. And I think they are trying to do the same here in Venezuela. Since the American DEA was expelled out of Venezuela, Venezuela has increased its effectiveness on its fight against drugs. The US government controls the drug distribution monopoly of the world, and that's in fact a fundamental factor of its economy, just as much as it is the sale of weapons worldwide, which the US uses to profit from the war economy.
Let's talk a little bit more locally now. You work with the Capital District, so let's talk about here in Caracas. Has drug use historically been a problem here in the capital?
Yo creo que dentro de los valores para ser considerada una epidemia, en Venezuela no se han reportado tantos índices como en otras ciudades del mundo. Sin embargo, nuestra lucha por la prevención
Drug use rates in Venezuela are not as high as there are in other countries. Our prevention program has been a determinant factor for such rates, and such program came from that new social approach based on solidarity that was prompted by Commander Chavez. This social approach aims at reducing poverty rates, increasing student enrollment, reducing extreme poverty, and ultimately the improvement of living standards of all Venezuelans. All the advances we have seen so far in Caracas have its roots in the social policies implemented by the Bolivarian government. The Venezuelan youth sees the Bolivarian Revolution as an alternative. We might say that being a revolutionary while following the moral and ethical example of our supreme leader, the Commander Chavez, is the antithesis of being a drug consumer or drug dealer, and that idea is the core of our fight against drugs. The Venezuelan youth have taken on a pivotal role in the Bolivarian Revolution. In other countries, you would never see a young man taking over the state duties regarding the youth. Participation has brought new dynamism to the Bolivarian Revolution, because the Venezuelan youth are extremely perseverant, and we believe nothing is impossible. No obstacles can stop us, so we work hard to achieve our goals. But also, we are never content with our work, so we are always trying to do and achieve more. And our participation has strengthened Venezuelan politics and also the policies implemented by the Bolivarian government regarding the youth. Nowadays, thanks to the Bolivarian Revolution, we have been able to achieve great things.
A las gestiones de gobierno en materia de juventud y que además de eso permite de que lo corriente no sea lo cotidiano, sino que nosotros hagamos cosas que parecían imposibles, pero que ahora se materializan a través de la revolución bolivariana.
And let's talk a little bit about once somebody becomes addicted. You know, once somebody is a drug addict, there's certainly a stigma associated with that person, and that stigma might prevent them from seeking treatment. Many people now see drug addiction as a disease. How does your office encourage people to seek treatment, and how does it help and assist people who are already addicted to drugs here in Caracas?
Sí, bueno, nosotros estamos articulados con la Oficina Nacional Antidroga, que es la que rige.
The Municipal Unit for Drug Enforcement works in coordination with the National Anti-Drug Office, which is a national law enforcement agency responsible for drafting state policy and legal regulation on drugs in Venezuela. There is a drug prevention system currently in place in Venezuela. For example, in Caracas, Venezuela's capital, there are 10 centers providing drug treatment services. Our job is to identify the drug cases so that we can provide people with proper treatment. The centers are a first step towards recovery. We offer a safe place for the youth with problems of drugs abuse. We don't reject them. On the contrary, we help them to overcome their drug addiction. Because drugs are chemical substances that, once they enter your body, affect your nervous system and cause addiction.
que al entrar al organismo altera el sistema nervioso y produce adicciones.
In recent years, some high-profile leaders, for example, the president of Uruguay, Jose Mujica, have called for radical changes in the way we sort of address drugs within the world system. In Uruguay, marijuana use is now legal. Do you agree that, it sounds like maybe you do agree that we need a radical change in the way we address drugs, not in one single country, but around the world?
Yo creo que el fenómeno de las drogas tiene una relación dialéctica con lo que hablaba al principio de los dos factores que...
As I was telling you at the beginning, we think that drug phenomenon has its roots in two historical factors. First, drugs as a tool for the control and domination of the peoples, and second, the political and economic use of drugs. I think the debate should be centered on a geopolitical analysis of drugs. Studies on drugs carried out so far don't take into consideration the historical factors, the global transformation, and the political, economic, and social interest surrounding the drug phenomenon. A geopolitical analysis of drugs should be at the front of a debate regarding drugs. Drugs played a significant role on the development of the capitalist system.
En el debate del tema de las drogas, yo creo que es fundamental el análisis geopolítico del tema de las drogas y que las drogas ha jugado un papel fundamental en la evolución del modelo capitalista.
And let's talk a little bit about the politics and the policies here in Venezuela for the consumption and possession of drugs. What are those policies?
En Venezuela el uso de las drogas obviamente es ilegal, entendiendo las drogas de distintas procedencias, pero también hay que plantear otros fenómenos que a veces se ven ocultos, que son las drogas legales. Por ejemplo,
In Venezuela, drugs are illegal. However, some legal drugs have underlying issues that need to be addressed as well. For example, domestic violence and crime are directly associated with alcohol, which is a legal drug. Tobacco is another legal drug, and most of the deaths in Venezuela are caused by this drug, with 103 chemical substances contained in a single cigarette. That's a fact that needs to be taken into account. These phenomena should be addressed not only as a health problem, but also as a political problem. So, only by having a political perspective on these matters, we would be able to find effective solutions to them.
Este fenómeno como un problema no solamente, digamos, sanitario, sanitario en sentido de la médico, sino hay que verlo desde el punto de vista político. Y desde el punto de vista político, que tiene que ver con el cruce de todos los fenómenos, es donde nosotros nos podemos plantear varias respuestas y varias soluciones que realmente sean eficaces y efectivas con el tema de las drogas.
And you were talking a little bit, but let's talk a little bit more about how Venezuela, following after the DEA, the U.S. DEA was kicked out here, how Venezuela has taken over the fight against drug trafficking and using its borders to traffic drugs, and many times, most times, to the United States ultimately.
Sí, según los informes anuales de la ONU en materia de antidrogas y contra el delito, se ha determinado por...
According to the UN Annual Report on Drugs and Crime, Venezuela has been free of legal drug crops for 8 consecutive years. And that's a proof of the great advances we have had on our fight against drugs. Nonetheless, we have witnessed the rising of a new crime phenomenon in the country. For example, recently, 2 individuals were arrested for the murder and dismemberment of a woman. Such crime was never seen in Venezuela before, and parapolitics is involved in this. Actually, the two individuals were linked to the Venezuelan opposition, and even to the former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe. They even confessed receiving military training and being financed by organizations linked to the United States to try to end with the Bolivarian Revolution and cause the ouster of President Nicolás Maduro. Parapolitics in Venezuela is an issue that needs to be tackled effectively, and President Nicolás Maduro has been doing so during the last years, and nowadays we are able to further understand the drugs issue and its relation with politics and economics in Venezuela.
Vislumbrar un poco y conocer un poco de cómo opera el tema de las drogas y cómo se vincula con los elementos políticos y económicos.
Simon Arrechider, he oversees the anti-drug program here in the Venezuelan Capital District. Thanks so much for joining us today to talk about your fight against the trafficking of drugs here in Venezuela and also the use of drugs. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us for this edition from Caracas. We'll see you again next week.